What is up, Nerf Nation? It's your boy Normatico, and I am here with another Blast review. Today we're going to be talking about the Excalibur. Excalibur is the latest design by Sillybutts, also known as Silly the Gamer, the genius who brought to you the Slab, the Cynthia, as well as a couple of other fun blasters. Now, the Excalibur itself is a hybrid blaster. It is a cross between a Caliburn and an Alchemist, and the name itself, Excalibur, is kind of a play towards the Caliburn. Now, how do I know this? Because Silly actually did announce that, and he did receive Captain Slug's blessing to name this blaster after his design. Now, Excalibur itself, it is his first design to actually use standard lengths as well as half-length darts, and it is made to do so utilizing the actual magwell. The blaster itself, much like a Caliburn, again, you can use both dart types, and I'll be honest with you, it works pretty flawlessly. Now, let's talk about this blaster itself, because the blaster itself, you actually have a couple of options. If you purchase the hardware kit from Out of Darts, you can buy the low-powered, the mid-powered, or the strongest powered spring, which is a K25. That is what I went with, which is a full length of K25. Of course, you could probably get the 708 spring, or you can even try to launch it into a K26 if you chose to. Now, Silly will tell you not to do a K26 because of the fact that you may damage the internal parts. Because of the fact that I do 3D printing in such a fashion where I literally print out bricks, I've actually run this with a K26, and I can tell you that the performance with this, using the rest of the hardware kit from Out of Darts, it is not really there. And here's why. When you actually buy the hardware kit from Out of Darts, they offer you the following options. You get a 12-inch or a 14-inch barrel. This one actually is the 14-inch. 12-inch would be closer to a little bit longer than a Lynx barrel, basically. And it does neuter the numbers, so to speak. Now, what I can tell you is that because of the fact that this is built after a Caliburn design, in fact, it uses the full length of coil like Caliburn, and as well as the plunger tube is about the length of the same volume as a Caliburn, you're looking, in order to get the better numbers out of this, by using a 55-centimeter barrel at least. I've actually used a 50-centimeter Kuriaka barrel in here, and you get some interesting performance gains with it. I believe that with a threaded 708 and full length of K26 in there, you're looking at numbers anywhere between 270 all the way up to 300 FPS with that barrel. Now, the prime on this thing, it is butter. What do I mean by butter? Well, this is a K25. Again, this is a 220 to 240 FPS blaster. And there you go. You know, super seasoned prime. It is great. And it is that way because of the fact that, much like the Alchemist, it does have a bearing-assisted priming mechanism. The way they actually Silly designed this thing is that you get bearings that actually hug the rail from two different locations. So it's super smooth to prime. Using a 708 spring at this point in time, it is literally a pinky prime. You know, just to give you an idea, one finger, there you go, it is primed. That is the draw of this blaster. Now, there are a couple things I'm going to highlight about this blaster, and that is that it does use completely plastic pusher hardware. Unlike the other Caliburns, the Alchemist, the Cynthia, the Indra, and any of other Slugs designs, you are using a 3D printed pusher, so you are going to lose a little bit of performance because of that, only because of the fact that plastic tends to breathe. What do I mean? Well, for example, if you've ever utilized one of the worker kits for the Retaliator, and you go with the plastic kit versus the metal pusher kit, you'll see that the performance drops, especially when you actually use the same spring type. We're talking about going from a 180 to 200 FPS blaster down to a 110 to 125 FPS blaster in my Retaliator builds. So there you have it. Now, the design itself, it does have a couple of nifty features. For example, I have the K25 spring. I do have a length of 708 spring. If I wanted to swap out, all I do is push it back here, this little button that's designed, I twist, much like a Game Face Try-On, and that springs out. That allows me to access the spring. Alternately, it also allows you to utilize a spring spacer here, which I have designed one for this blaster, which when you actually put it in, it only really gets the benefit if you use an extended barrel, not the barrel that comes with stock. Anybody who is interested in that, go ahead and actually reach out to me. I'll be more than happy to send you a file for the spring spacer that I designed specifically for this blaster that fits in there. It's a real simple design, actually. And of course, if you wanted it 3D printed, just reach out to me. We'll toss me a couple of coin for my for my filament, and we'll be good. Now, on this blaster, you're going to notice it does have the AccuSaber. The AccuSaber is actual saber scar that you've seen me promote before. This is actually designed by France Foamwork. This is the final revision of the AccuSaber, and it does give a little bit of a boost with this blaster because it is under barreled. We're looking at anywhere between 5 to 10 FPS, yeah. If you are interested in actually getting your own AccuSaber, if you have the Excalibur kit from Out of Darts, go to the Etsy store, which is Big Blaster Consortium, and you can actually buy those there. They actually sell a 2-pack, one with the design choice that you want regarding color scheme, and one that comes with a safety orange tip. And I believe that the pricing right now is $18.99, and that includes 2 AccuSabers, one for display, one for actual use. So there you have it. I can also tell you that you actually pick your own design color, and yeah. How do I know these things? Well, if you have not been paying attention to Foam After Dark, I actually opened up an Etsy store, and it is called the Big Blaster Consortium. Of course, there you have the option of buying not only the AccuSaber, there is right now a glow-in-the-dark AccuSaber that I did as a single-time print, and it's available there, as well as the option for me to 3D print you a custom-printed blaster. Now, there are some stipulations regarding that, but we'll talk that later on. Needless to say, Excalibur is not one that I can print for you. Now, regarding the blaster, obviously I did 3D print this one. As you can see, the color scheme is very familiar, especially to those of you who are older nerfers. Yes, I did this on purpose. Since Silly was actually inspired by the design of the Caliburn, he went OG when it came to like the original printed blaster, which I consider that to be the Caliburn and the Talon Claw. I decided to go OG with OG end strike colors for the actual Excalibur. It came out pretty nice. Now, this is not actually, end strike yellow, but it is pretty close. Now, the blaster itself, when you actually put it together, it assembles in 2 separate pieces. You actually have the front half and the back half, and then there's actually 2 rails that meet here in the center. That is what this screw is. And then, of course, you are able to tighten it up by literally adjusting it with this tension rod. This tension bolt helps to draw the blaster together and close it. You're supposed to tighten this until it gets too tight, and then you tighten one more time. Now, there have been reports out of Australia from people who've tried to actually get this blaster to perform even more, that it starts to bow out and banana. Silly took that into consideration when he designed his instructions. Yeah. The blaster itself, he will tell you, do not over-tighten it because it will cause the blaster to bend. That is the nature of this blaster. So when you're actually putting it together, you're going to want to pay attention to the instructions, first of all, because that little torsion, bolt, that tension bolt, you twist that until you start to feel it get tight, and then you tighten one more time, and then that's it. That's it. That's all you got to do. You don't have to tighten it until it stops. If you tighten it until it can no longer tighten anymore, you're going to cause the blaster to bend. So, now, some people have said that there's a fix for that. Obviously, if you try to do a full-length rail, give it a backbone, but I'll be honest with you, that's not necessary. That's not necessary. Printing this blaster, I really hope, again, that Silly is hired on eventually by one of the blaster corporations because his designs are great, and for 3D printing, the guy is a genius. All of his builds are fantastic, first of all. If you have never actually had a 3D printed blaster before that you've done yourself, I recommend starting with one of Silly's designs or one of Lidl's designs, because the way that they actually situate their files, you don't have to worry about it being oriented properly. It's going to print, and 9 times out of 10, the files do not need very many supports or even a brim. I don't think I used a brim one time with this actual build. So that being said, that's the Excalibur. Now, I do want to pay attention to a couple of things regarding Excalibur that makes it different from any of Silly's other designs. He actually designed this because people were saying, hey, why don't you do something with standard length darts? So yes, it does use standard length darts. But for those of you who, like me, have adopted the half dart, he also included this nifty little file, which is a Talon adapter. And the way this actually works is that you slide this in right here. First, you do have to prime the blaster. And then you slip this in right here by the front of the magwell. And then there's this little pin that's included with the hardware kit. And you just slip that in and push. And now it is a Talon compatible blaster. It does have a skinny pusher, so you just go ahead and actually slap the magazine in, and then you can actually prime. You don't have to prime it to load the magazine, but you do need to prime to load the adapter itself. Just keep that in mind. Now, one of the things I will point out in the actual design itself, and this is really cool in my opinion, is that he designed two types of, I guess, barrel mounts for this. One that's a little bit wider that allows you to use waffle tip darts or wide-headed darts, and then one that uses the more narrow tips, such as the worker darts or the dart zone darts. Because of that, it is the first time I've actually used a pro-level blaster where I can fire AccuStrike darts. Yeah, straight up original Nerf AccuStrike darts launch out of the 508 barrel. Now, that is why they launch out, is because it's the 508 barrel. However, something in the way this is designed is allowing this to happen. I don't know what kind of sorcery and witchcraft it is, but it works. The other actual dart type that fired out of this, which was not able to fire out of my Caliburn for some reason, was Dart Zone Nitro Shot darts, the standard length Nitro Shot darts. And mind you, they do go relatively slow. You're not breaking 200 FPS with them, but they fly out, and they fly out straight. So there you have it. It's kind of nice to be able to actually utilize AccuStrike darts. So I may pull those out of the fold and run this as a full length once or twice. Of course, that then makes me wonder, how well do AccuStrikes perform at 215 FPS, which is what I measured with them. I'll just see that. Anywho, the darts that actually work really well with this blaster, I'll be honest with you, are, of course, the Dart Zone Bamboo 2s. They do fly really hot. And then, of course, you have the Worker Gen 3 Heavies, which they are a little bit slower, but they fly just as far because it's a heavier dart type. You know, you're talking 1.3 grams versus 0.9 or less. And then, of course, if you wanted to actually run a really good dart type through here that's a good hybrid, Lilyfun made actually some glow-in-the-dark tip darts that range anywhere between 0.9 and 1.2 grams. Obviously, it's a pretty big variance in the box, but they perform pretty darn well, and they are relatively inexpensive compared to the standard price of worker darts. But we're not here to talk about darts. We're here to talk about this blaster. So the blaster itself, as I said, it does take about 2 days to print with consistent printing. If you actually put all the major same colored parts on one print bed, you can probably cut that time down a little bit. So anyways, there you have it, y'all. This is the Excalibur. I mean, it's a pretty decent blaster, and I think that anyone actually builds this will enjoy it. Now, you can get the hardware kit, as I said, from Out of Darts. I hear that he's actually going to be licensing AK Blaster Mods to sell it for Asia distribution, as well as Silver Fox Industries. I have not seen Silver Fox post this yet on their actual website, but it is available now from Out of Darts. Now, we will talk more about that when we actually come back to our final thoughts regarding the blaster, because, again, we're just talking about the blaster right now. Up next, let's run through the chronograph and get the Let's take a look and see how far this blaster can actually shoot. We got 2 Bamboo 2 darts in here. We're going to do an angled shot and a straight shot. All right, well, I thought that I had two Bamboo 2 loaded. Apparently, I only had one. So, yeah, had to reload there for a second. Let's go ahead and actually see where these darts landed and see how far we can get with the Excalibur using the K25 spring. All right, so with the straight shot, we recorded about 110 feet. With the angled shot, we recorded actually at 190 feet, which that does make sense given that Bamboo 2 darts are lighter darts, so they won't necessarily travel as far as, say, a heavy dart will. And that right around squares away with 220 FPS in actual testing with outdoor environments such as wind, because I can see that we actually do have a headwind, which caused the dart to slow down just a little bit when we did the angled shot. So all in all, not a bad performance when it comes to distance with Excalibur. Again, I do recommend printing this blaster. It's a really easy print. But yeah, we'll be back with our final thoughts regarding the rest of the Excalibur. Here are my final thoughts regarding the blaster. I will tell you that there's a couple of things with this blaster that I really love and it has going for it. Pretty much the design of it, it's great. It is a pump action springer that does what it needs to do. I actually got it specifically for a 250 FPS build. It doesn't quite meet the 250 FPS cap with the hardware kit that's involved here. However, I already know how to get it to there. So let's talk about modification for this blaster. If you wanted to lose the ability to utilize the standard length darts, such as the AccuStrike darts or even the Nitro Shot darts, you can get a tighter inner diameter barrel. I actually have one order that's on its way from Saber. It's a 580 barrel, so 58 centimeters, and that should be right there at the sweet spot for this blaster. Now, you can get a Kuriaka barrel on here. I've tested it with a Kuriaka barrel, and with the Kuriaka barrel, I believe it was a 50 centimeter barrel, I was knocking 300 FPS with Bamboo 2s, right there between 270 and 280s with the Worker Heavies and the Worker Gen 3 standards. So it is a decent performing blaster when you get to it. Now, what we do need to address is the elephant in the room. And this, please, is not anything negative to be said about Sillybutts. Silly does not set prices, he licenses, and that's fine. I would humbly recommend him licensing to more printers, only because of the fact that the cost of this blaster is what is going to make people balk. Let's have an honest conversation here. And understand, I'm coming from somebody with access to a 3D printer. This is not anything to insult Out of Darts, Foamdemic, or Silver Fox Industries, or Frontline Foam. Those are the major names in the hobby. Except for minus Foamdemic. Their name is unfortunately mud in the hobby right now. But let's talk about this. If you have access to a 3D printer, or if you know anybody who has access to a 3D printer, for less than $30, you can print out this blaster. Yeah. If you buy your filament rolls at $16.99 per roll of filament, and that's easy to get, you're looking, actually no, it's a little bit more than $30, but you're not going to be using 2 full rolls of filament. This blaster itself should take no more than 1 roll and maybe 1/8 of a roll of filament. Of course, if you do multiple color options like I did, you're going to have to buy it and make sure you have more rolls. But if you already have the filament laying around, there you go. Less than $30, you can assemble this blaster. You buy the hardware kit, which is about $90. Actually, no, it's less than that technically. But there you go. For less than $120, you get yourself a blaster. Here is the issue. The hardware kit alone from Out of Darts cost me $95 to ship. Now, I understand they can't control shipping costs. They put the parts into a box, they ship the box, but what I can tell you, though, is that a couple of things go into shipping costs. Weight and dimensions. The box that they chose to ship all of these things in was way oversized for the actual parts that were inside of it. They could have literally used a smaller shipping tube because the only reason they need a longer box was for the actual barrel. Everything else literally fit into maybe 12 inches, 14 inches of aluminum bars, because there was 6 aluminum bars together, and a couple of baggies of screws and O-rings. That's it. There's no reason that UPS should be charging you $13 to ship this. It doesn't make sense. Not by weight, certainly not by the size of the actual parts. It is the size of the box that's used. Now, I get that Out of Darts is choosing to ship it into a larger box, and that's fine, but understand that that's where your shipping cost is coming from, and it's going to actually cause some sticker shock. Now, when you take a look at that, the shipping itself was about $12 or $13. That leaves the remaining $80 to be the actual price of the hardware kit plus tax. The hardware kit is actually labeled anywhere between, I want to say it's $75 or $70, around there. My issue that I balk at that with is that, yes, you do get some aluminum bars here, and there's plenty because it's a linear rail system. However, the Caliburn itself, the Caliburn variant, you can actually buy that kit from somewhere else and get it for a little bit less than $70, and you also get an aluminum pusher. Excalibur does not use an aluminum pusher. It is a 3D printed part, and because of that, you lose performance. Now, there may be a genius out there, or a mad scientist like myself, who is going to try to work on readjusting the file for here to make it so that it works with an actual Caliburn pusher, so you get the metal into the metal barrel, which creates a better seal. However, that's also going to be increasing the cost. But I don't see where the cost of plastic bearings, because they are plastic bearings that we used, would increase the price of you receiving less hardware than a Caliburn, but then being charged the same cost of a Caliburn. And I get it, you can come at me with all about there being tariffs and whatnot, but I'm not buying it necessarily. So there you have it. Yes, the hardware kit's available. Of course, if you chose to do your own cutting, which again, you're going to be paying Out of Darts for the drilling process, I guess, up through the aluminum bars. You can actually buy the aluminum bars from McMaster and then drill them yourself. That is actually probably going to be my next skill set that I learn. But yeah, the other thing though is the the cost of the blaster to buy it from Out of Darts. The cost of admission, $280 plus tax plus shipping. This is not worth $280. I'll be honest with you. And this is not a slam against Silly. Silly made a great design. But when I look at other blasters that are out there that I can pay less than $280 and get more performance out of, I have a hard time picking Excalibur. My U-Burn would run anywhere between 180 to 200. And that pops off more than 300 FPS without a problem. The Indra, which if you actually follow my community post, you'll see that I actually purchased an Indra, and I got that secondhand. I think I paid roughly $65 out the door for it, but I can get a kit for an Indra for about $60, 3D print it, and my Indra is popping in the 270 range. So again, I have a hard time, if I'm looking for performance, getting a blaster that with the stock kit that it offers, I'm only getting right around 220 to 240 FPS. So there you have it. Again, if you can actually 3D print it yourself, it's worth it. The saving grace on this blaster, and again, this is not a slam on the blaster design, because again, I have no complaints about this blaster. But the saving grace that would make me say, hey, yeah, I would rather get that as opposed to, say, a Caliburn, is the priming mechanism. That is super smooth. So smooth that I was actually, at one time during testing, was able to take a 708 spring, thread it with a full length of K26 Pro spring, and nail 300 FPS, and the prime was just the same. Buttery smooth. So there you have it. It's a great blaster. It's a fantastic design. Buying it, though, is the part that's going to make people balk. Honestly, if Out of Darts was to sell this and say, hey, you know what? We're going to sell it for $200 or $215, I'd jump on it in a heartbeat. Because you know what? That's what I would charge somebody to actually assemble it. And that's with me buying the hardware from Out of Darts. That's what my price, if you were to say, hey, Normatico, if you had the license to sell it, how much would you sell it for with your AMS printing? I would say about $200 because it's an easy print. There's nothing complicated about this. Even the assembly is super simple, ridiculously simple. Like the hardest part, and I even made a comment on Reddit, which who knows if Silly watches this channel, he'll recognize the blaster because he saw me post it on Reddit. The hardest part about the entire assembly, the part that took the longest, was clearing the supports from this little part where you thread the elastic cord for the magwell. That took me about a good 20 minutes, only because of the fact that I had to chisel in there, and it's like, okay, I want to make sure I get all those supports out properly, and so I'm able to thread the elastic. But other than that, this is ridiculously simple. I think I spent more time trying to figure out which iron sights to print out than I did to actually put the blaster together once you actually assemble the main components. That's my final thoughts regarding the Excalibur. Worth it if you got a 3D printer, worth it if you have access to a 3D printer, worth it if you want to spend $90 on a hardware kit and then about $15 or $30 on filament. Not worth it if you're going to be buying it for $280 pre-assembled Out of Darts. Yeah, that's crazy sauce. So there you have it. I want to thank you all for watching Secondhand Blasters. If you are interested in purchasing one of the AccuSabers for your build, go to the Big Blaster Consortium on Etsy.com and feel free to send me an order there. Until next time, y'all, keep on blasting.